Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Are the young people of Canada losing all hope of getting ahead? A recent study by the MacDonald-Laurier Institute sheds light on attitudes of young Canadians and their economic outlook. Aaron Wudrick is back to discuss. He's the Domestic Policy Program Advisor at MLI. Welcome back, Aaron.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So first of all, sort of general question, just to set the table a little bit. Tell us about this research that you conducted at the MacDonald-Laurier Institute.
Yeah, so Tony, there's been a lot of talk about how young people are pessimistic. They don't have much hope for the future. We wanted to dive into this. We wanted to quantify this. And so we partnered with a fellow named Blair Gibbs, who's an expert in this. He's come over from the UK where he specialized in political polling. And we did some focus groups and some polling with younger Canadians under age 30 to see how they felt about their future prospects. And unsurprisingly, the picture did match quite a bit of what we sort of hear qualitatively. A lot of Canadians do not have a lot of hope or optimism for the future.
So is this kind of unprecedented, the nature of their attitudes?
Yeah, I think this is a little bit cyclical, but what really stuck out to us here was going into it, we weren't sure if things like, for example, COVID measures and lockdowns would have had a big impact. The number one thing by far was housing. Most Canadians under age 30 have basically given up on the idea of owning a home. Several of them proactively mentioned in the focus groups things like, my parents at my age or my parents at age 30 could buy a house. Somewhere near a major city. That's just completely unrealistic for me. And this was a theme that kept coming up time and time again. The cost of housing is something that younger people just seem extremely depressed by.
So how does that, I don't know whether you drill down on this, but how does it affect their saving choices, their spending choices, their political choices?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, they don't have a lot of money to save in the first place. I think what was remarkable was just this sense that they've been dealt a bad hand. This idea, for example, that, if you were a blue collar worker, 30 years ago, you could earn a decent living. You could expect realistically to own a home. Now that's all out the window. So and what's striking too is that whether it's folks who, go to university or don't, there's still a general level of pessimism. I would say it's a little bit less with folks who have higher education, but it is, the theme of housing came back over and over again, and it's sort of leading people to believe that the system is stacked against them, and we didn't get into this in this study, but I'm wondering if that is partially responsible for some of the sort of political trends that we're seeing in terms of where young people are considering voting.
So is this the economic reality, or is some of this pessimism unwarranted?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, for a lot of them, they sort of specifically referenced that they, based on their projected income stream and the cost of houses today, they're just never going to be able to afford a house. Interesting, the few people who did, when you scratch the surface, they expect to get help from their families. So, buying a house used to be something that you could hope to achieve if you just worked hard. Now, unless you have help, unless you're fortunate enough to have a family that's going to help you, it just, for a lot of them, they just feel it's never going to happen.
Right. Is there any aspect of this that was divorced from housing, like generally cost of living, cost of transportation, those kinds of issues?
Yeah, I mean, the general affordability was a theme, but housing specifically was the dominant theme. So I think, for a lot of people, because it's such a large, it's the single largest purchase that most people made, that sort of weighed heavily in their mind, but it was also clearly impacting other life decisions. There was a lot of rumination about getting married. Of course, this could also impact whether you have kids, right? If you don't own a house, nowhere to raise kids, I think that was also something that kept coming up. One other thing that was interesting that we didn't expect to find was that the pessimism was even starker with younger women. There's a lot of talk now about younger men and sort of younger men's struggles. But in this particular survey, and we'd like to sort of delve into this further in a future study, younger women in particular had a very pessimistic outlook.
We're having an interesting discussion with Aaron Wudrick. He is the Director of Domestic Policy at the MacDonald-Laurier Institute, talking about a recent survey they did of young people and sort of their attitudes to their economic future. We're going to continue to delve into this after the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.